Good evening, Bermuda, and welcome to the weekly COVID-19 press conference. Premier, please begin with your remarks.
Good evening, Bermuda. For more than a year now, we have endured tests on our resilience, the likes of which we have not seen in a century. We have all lived through a time of unparalleled challenges, frustrations, and restrictions on our everyday lives that we could have never dreamed of. Throughout it all, we have been resilient and we have been united. I recognize that even the most resilient of persons can grow weary when constantly tested. It is clear throughout the world and here on our own island that persons are eager to see the end of lockdowns, the end of restrictions, and a return to normality. Unfortunately, for many countries, this is simply not possible due to the continuing presence of the coronavirus and the spread of new, highly transmissible variants. Just yesterday, the United Kingdom government announced a 4-week delay to the end of their restrictions. Singapore remains in a phased and cautious reopening. Canada continues to maintain strict border and local restrictions. And in Melbourne, Australia, persons are not allowed to have visitors in their home. However, here in Bermuda, our progress of moving beyond the pandemic is as evident as ever. Tonight, it will be announced that all local restrictions, with the exception of 2 rules regarding mask wearing in indoor public places and restrictions on large groups, will come to an end on Sunday, June 20th at 5 a.m. The Minister of Health will explain in more detail which regulations will remain. In short, you can sit more than 10 to a table in a restaurant. You can stay out past midnight, and there will not be any restrictions on activities on land or on water. And in most circumstances, you will not require a mask outdoors anymore. It is important for everyone to note that we are not claiming an end to the pandemic. The government is able to confidently end restrictions due to our success in reducing local transmission, increasing vaccinations, and by implementing strict controls at our borders to protect our island from dangerous variants. We can open up our island because we will protect our borders. Tonight, I am grateful to be joined by the Minister of Health, the Honorable Kim Wilson, the Minister of National Security, the Honorable Renee Ming, and Government Scientific Advisor and Director of the Molecular Diagnostic Laboratory, Dr. Karika Weldon. The Minister of Health will provide the country with an update on our latest coronavirus test results, vaccination statistics, revisions to the travelers who will be exempt from mandatory supervised quarantine, and outline the changes to the regulations. The Minister of National Security will provide final details on the mandatory supervised quarantine facilities and operations. And Dr. Karika Weldon will give a presentation to the country on coronavirus variants and the work she and her team at MDL are doing to keep Bermuda informed of what we are dealing with. I'm also pleased to be joined tonight by the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Ayo Oyeloye, and the Chief of Staff of the King Edward Memorial Hospital, the Chief of Staff of Bermuda Hospitals Board, Dr. Wesley Miller. They are both here to answer any questions from the media on technical medical questions that are better suited for medical doctors. To begin tonight, we'll hear from the Minister of Health. Minister?
Thank you, Premier, and good evening to everyone. Let me first start off by expressing my deep gratitude to everyone who has worked tirelessly hard in Bermuda to keep Bermuda safe from the coronavirus. We have made significant progress in controlling the spread of the virus, and we appear to be turning the corner with our positive coronavirus cases continuing to fall. The Ministry of Health received 1,445 test results since the last update, and 1 was positive for COVID-19. and this gives us a test positivity rate of 0.1%. The new case is classified as under investigation. It is a resident with no currently identified link to other known cases or history of travel in the past 14 days. Additionally, since the last update, there were no recoveries and no deaths. There are currently 5 active cases, of which 5 are under public health monitoring, and 1 is in hospital with none in intensive care. Since March 2020, Bermuda has recorded 2,499 total confirmed cases of COVID-19, and out of those, 2,461 persons have recovered, and sadly, there have been 33 COVID-related deaths. The source of all of our cases is as follows. 308 are imported, 2,189 are classified as local transmission, of which 1,682 are local transmission with a known contact or source, and 507 are local transmission with an unknown contact or source, and 2 are under investigation. As investigations proceed, transmission categories may change. The 7-day average of our real-time reproduction number is less than 1. Bermuda's current WHO country status remains at community transmission. Bermuda's WHO country status could be changed to sporadic cases by the 21st of June 2021 if our epidemiological situation continues to meet the criteria. For example, the case numbers remain low and any detected cases are either imported or linked to imported or other known cases. Bermuda's current PAHU country status is sporadic cases. I will now provide an update on our vaccination program. We have completed the 22nd full week of vaccinations. Since the 11th of January, Bermuda has administered a total of 76,526 vaccinations, and that figure rises to 76,860 if you include the vaccinations that were administered on Sunday, June 13th, and yesterday, Monday, June 14th as well. Of those 76,526 vaccinations given as of June 12th, 52% were women and 48% are men. 81.6% of all residents over the age of 65 have had at least one vaccination, and 76.4% of those over that age are fully immunized. To date, 64% of the total population has been vaccinated, namely having 1 dose, and 55.4% of the total population has been fully immunized, having had 2 doses. We've had questions about the percentage of the population that is eligible to be vaccinated. To date, 72% of the eligible population has been vaccinated with 1 dose, and 62% of the eligible population has been immunized, again, 2 doses. We have confirmation that Government House is able to provide to us a further 4,680 more Pfizer vaccines doses that are due to arrive next week from the UK, which of course is excellent news. This will allow us to continue to offer vaccinations to as many people as possible. The more people who are immunized, the safer our community becomes, and I am pleased to announce that we can now end most public health restrictions due to our significant progress in controlling the virus as reflected in our updated country status. However, the following restrictions will remain in place, and they are as follows. A maximum of 100 people for large group gatherings, and the wearing of masks indoors, particularly when you are not eating or drinking. Regarding face masks, by now all of us know a face mask is a key preventative measure when it comes to slowing the spread of the coronavirus. We also know that we have not yet conquered this global pandemic, so mask wearing indoors, the setting which is most likely to result in transmission, will continue for some time to come. And what does this mean, for example, for gyms? Gym owners will no longer need to space their equipment. However, when not working out, staff and patrons must still wear a mask. To be blunt, we do not know who is or who is not vaccinated, and now is not the time to end our vigilance completely. We have come far too far and worked far too hard for the successes that we've achieved. The entire Bermuda community deserves relaxations, but within this reasonable limit, wear a mask indoors. We are completing all of the necessary amendments to finalize the quarantine order pertaining to mandatory quarantine. And as the Premier indicated, as of June 20th, 2021, all non-immunized persons traveling to Bermuda are subject to mandatory quarantine. Mandatory quarantine means those hotel and guest house properties that have been designated as such by the Bermuda government. There are 7 approved quarantine locations, and they are as follows: Cocoa Reef Resort, Grotto Bay Beach Resort and Spa, Hamilton Princess and Beach Club, Willowbank Resort, Coral Beach and Tennis Club, Rosemont Guest Suites, and Fairmont Southampton. Travelers arriving on Sunday, June 20th or after will need to follow the new travel authorization process, where they will be asked a series of questions to determine the category of traveler which they fall into. And the new processes will be available tomorrow at https://www.gov.bm/coronavirus travelers. Again, that information will be available on that website from tomorrow. The travel authorization fee will remain the same at $75. An unimmunized traveler requiring a quarantine hotel must do the following. They must cover the cost for their hotel stay. They must choose from one of the 7 participating properties and book their hotel in advance of arriving in Bermuda. For those people who were already abroad before the 6th of May, the Bermuda government will pay for the quarantine stay. And the details of this will be made available to the public in the coming days. Exemptions from the quarantine hotel are limited to the following: unaccompanied minors aged 17 years or younger on the date of arriving in Bermuda, medically vulnerable persons that are certified by a licensed physician, psychologist, or a local health insurer, and the caregivers of those medically vulnerable travelers. These persons will still be required to quarantine and will have checks to ensure that they are quarantining at home. Minor children, namely those under the age of 18, will follow a traveler's first 14 days for children unless they or their parents are required to quarantine. And this will include students returning home from boarding school, for example. Each non-immunized traveler must have a confirmed prepaid booking at a government-authorized hotel to apply for their travel authorization. And every immunized traveler must upload proof of their immunization status to their travel authorization. Testing for travelers will expand to include children from the age of 2, with the oropharyngeal PCR test being used for young children. We will continue to do our best to keep Bermuda COVID-free as we welcome residents home and visitors to our island and reopen our economy. The next close to home mobile vaccinations will be held at Sands Middle School on Thursday, the 17th of June from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. On Saturday, June 19th at the National Sports Center from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and next week, Tuesday, June 22nd at the Shelley Bay Marketplace, again from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Currently, the Close to Home program is administering second doses only. If you've had your first dose at Sands Middle School, please remember to get your second jab on Thursday. If you want a free ride to any of the Close to Home mobile vaccination sites, please call 533-5903 between the hours of 10 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. Minibuses are available to take you there and to bring you back home. Since the mobile vaccination program began on the 27th of April, a total of 3,835 vaccines have been given as of June 13th. About 66% of those injections were administered to people receiving their first dose. If you need assistance getting vaccinated or have questions, please contact vaccine@gov.bm or call the hotline at 444-2498 and select option number 2. The vaccine call center is available from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. Monday to Friday and Saturdays from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. The vaccine call center is closed on Sundays. With the new supply of vaccine due to arrive on island next week, we are asking all people who are interested in being vaccinated to register online at gov.bm and you will get an appointment. And we will begin first doses again later on this week. The Ministry of Health is aware of a fake email error message being circulated regarding the COVID-19 vaccination certificates. If you receive or have received correspondence entitled Vaccine Certificate Error from CONBEA, C-O-N-B-E-A, at northrock.bm and signed the COVID-19 vaccine team, please ignore it and delete it. All official emails regarding the COVID-19 vaccine certificates are sent from the Government of Bermuda COVID-19 response team, and that email address is bermudacovidvaccine@resquest.com. You can also contact the vaccine hotline again at 444-2498 and select option 2 or email vaccinescertificate@gov.bm. In closing, I want to remind the public to have an accurate and comprehensive list of every guest at any of the events that you hold or gatherings, including yard and house parties. Guest lists should include the full name, email, date, and the time of arrival for anyone that's in attendance. And this should also provide table or seating assignment details and departure times if possible. And this information is extremely important and necessary to facilitate contact tracing in the event of a connected case of COVID-19. Please remember, each of us must do our own part to stop the spread of the coronavirus. And it is essential that we follow public health guidelines as stated before. Wear a mask, practice good hand hygiene, maintain physical distancing, and download the We Health Bermuda app. And do the research, talk to your doctor, and make an informed decision about getting the COVID-19 vaccine. There's a wealth of information about the vaccines online at gov.bm. So stay safe, Bermuda, and don't forget to avoid the 3 C's: closed spaces, crowded places, and close contact settings. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Health. And I echo your word of thanks to all those involved in our vaccination program, and most recently, our Close to Home mobile vaccination initiative to make vaccines even more accessible to those who want them. Thank you to the Ministry of Health staff, the Department of Communications, the Bermuda Health Council, King Edward Memorial Hospital staff, the Royal Bermuda Regiment, and all of the doctors, nurses, volunteers who work tirelessly to make mobile vaccinations a success. Thank you to all the businesses, charities, and local organizations who have so generously supported our vaccination program and our efforts to protect Bermuda through accessibility to the COVID-19 vaccine. It has been wonderful to see all areas of our community, from healthcare to government workers and the private sector, come together to support one another for the benefit of Bermuda. The revised exemptions that were outlined by the Minister of Health set out what we believe will meet the legal tests required and achieve the overarching aim of protecting Bermuda from the introduction of dangerous variants. If there's any doubt on the impact variant spread can have on plans to reopen our economy and end restrictions, I refer persons to my earlier comments on the UK, where the end of their restrictions has been delayed for another month due to the spread of the Indian or Delta variant. All that separates Bermuda from the introduction of variants onto our shores is a nonstop flight from the United Kingdom, where case numbers have returned to levels not seen in 4 months, in a matter of weeks. Relaxing our guard at this time could potentially delay the reopening of these islands for months. Risk-based policy often defies logic. That simply means it can be difficult to make sense of it all. Sometimes that policy can be the source of a passing comment or a moment of reflection. But where that policy implements restrictions of freedoms we ordinarily enjoy, the risk is clearly great. There is a clear and growing evidence that immunization significantly reduces the risk of persons transmitting the virus. That means when an unimmunized person leaves the comparative safety Bermuda, where we have so few active cases and exposed to variants overseas, that person on their return represents a greater risk to the people of Bermuda than the fellow immunized residents. I respect the right of people to not be immunized. And that is why this government has never sought to make vaccination mandatory. I respect the personal choice of an unimmunized person to risk traveling to a location overseas, which may have a prevalence of variants. But the potential consequences of those personal risks taken must be mitigated by the government's duty to keep Bermuda safe. The government also recognizes that there are residents abroad who, through no fault of their own, are not able to get vaccinated. For those persons who left Bermuda before May 6th, when mandatory supervised quarantine was announced, and who are not able to be vaccinated in the country they are in, the government will cover the costs of supervised quarantine, as was mentioned by the Minister of Health. These persons are not exempt from having to quarantine, but the costs will be fully covered for their stay in a designated facility. We envision that this group will consist mainly of our students overseas, but this applies to any person who fits this criteria. So you may be a resident overseas with your child in a football academy or overseas working in a place where there is no access to the vaccine. As you left the country before the policy it was announced, we look forward to welcoming you back and making sure that you can safely quarantine before re-entering the general population. Our students coming home, especially from the UK, please be safe. Take care of yourselves as the Delta variant is spreading over there in the United Kingdom. While we're on the subject of variants, I now invite Dr. Karika Weldon to highlight the work being done by her team at the Molecular Diagnostic Laboratory to track variants here in Bermuda. Dr. Weldon?
Thank you, Mr. Premier. I'm just going to share my screen. Good evening, Bermuda. I'm pleased to share with you an update on Bermuda's current testing results of the recent coronavirus variants. To recap, my last update in March, I informed that Bermuda was able to conduct a rapid variant PCR test that allows for the identification of certain variants within 1 hour as opposed to weeks via sequencing. This looks for certain signature mutations that are specific to variants in current circulation. I also shared that the test was a screening test, which allows us to identify a normal strain, the UK, and Brazil or South African variants. A further test was needed to determine between Brazil and South African strains. At the time, we tested 365 positive samples of cases between October 6, 2020 and March 1st, 2021. The breakdown of the cases was as follows. 326 or 89% were normal strain, and this included those from the December 2020 outbreak. We have sequenced some of these, and it was actually a mixture of different strains at that time. 10% or 35 were the UK strain, all being imported cases with, at that time, no evidence of local transmission. And around 1% was a mixture of Denmark, South African, or inconclusive. From the 2nd of March until June 11th, there has been a shift in the ratio of variants we have on island. Out of the 1,292 samples that yielded a variant test result, 1,281 or 99% are the UK strain. The outbreak lasted just shy of 3 months, with May 26 being the last day this variant has been detected in a new case. In addition to this major strain, there have been 6 normal strains or 0.5% in this time frame, All are imported cases or close contacts of imported cases. In addition, there have been 2 more inconclusive, and they will be sent for further sequencing. On the June 3rd, 3 arrival cases from the US were detected as the South African variant. As stated before, this is not the first time this variant has been detected in the country, as Bermuda had an imported case detected on January 13th, determined in our first round of rapid variant testing at the end of February. Thankfully, there was no further spread at this time, and it was the only case determined as that variant. No Brazil or Indian variants have been detected in Bermuda as of today. Since the first batch of variant PCR tests, there have been additional tests for 3 targets on the virus so that we can determine the presence of the Indian variant. By using these tests, MDL was able to quickly rule out that the newly imported cases on June 3rd were not the Indian variant. The turnaround time for variant tests has also gotten a bit quicker now due to the outbreak being over. During the outbreak, MDL would run variant tests approximately every 3 to 4 days. Now with the lower case numbers, we aim to turn around results between 3 to 12 hours after detection is made. This allows health authorities to know very quickly what we are dealing with and how to respond. It is also worth noting that variants of concern now have some new names. The UK, or B.1.17, is Alpha. The South African is now Beta, or B.1.351. Brazil, or P1, is now Gamma. And the Indian variant, which is B.1.617.2, is now known as Delta. The diagram below compares transmissibility, disease severity, and that is deaths and hospitalizations that is pictured, as well as the efficacy of the vaccines to prevent symptomatic infections. As you can see, the Pfizer vaccine has also been shown to be just as effective against the UK or Alpha and Delta variants. They are less than a normal strain, but as we experienced, it does do well against the Alpha strain. It is clear though, as you can see in the diagram below, that the Beta strain does have less efficacy with the Pfizer vaccine. It does not transmit greater, and it does not seem to increase hospitalizations and deaths compared to the normal strains, but it is possible that those who are fully immunized can indeed pick up the South African strain. This is why we will continue to test all fully immunized persons on arrival, day 4, day 8, and day 14. We want to make sure that our borders are safe. Before I close, I also want to update that MDL has moved, although hopefully you could not tell. We were aiming to move without disruption to the daily testing. As of last Friday, we are no longer in St. David's and are now in our more permanent location in Warwick. I would like to give a shout out to the Bermuda Government Central Lab, who were so gracious to give us their space and support that allowed us to perform over 250,000 COVID-19 tests. To both the Food and Water and Forensics labs, MDL, thanks you so much. And also thank you, Bermuda, for being so supportive, and we look forward to continuing to offer you the best service we can and keeping the country safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Weldon, for that presentation and to outline the variants which have been detected in Bermuda. And thank you for all the work that you and your team continue to do for the country. We've been fortunate to have you and your team of young scientists. So I was able to visit a few days ago in Southside before the moves. And we all see that you are there on the front lines working to make sure that you get these tests completed for us. But of course, the team at MDL is just one part of the equation. And certainly, it is all of the staff that work day in and day out at our testing facilities, especially at the Perot Post Office, at our testing facilities around the country, those persons who are working at the hospital, our private labs, Helix and CNS West, they have all helped Bermuda to maintain consistently one of the best testing regimes in the world. And I want to thank all of you who have been a part of this success. I certainly hope, Dr. Weldon, that your team will enjoy its new location, which was one of the projects that were contained in the government's economic stimulus program. Finally, this evening, before we close, we'll hear from the Minister of National Security, the Honorable Renee Ming, who will provide an update on matters under her ministry related to the enforcement of the restrictions, and who will also share the final details on how to book the mandatory quarantine facilities for those persons who will not be exempt from supervised quarantine. Minister Ming?
Good evening, Bermuda. It's been a while. I wish to start by taking this opportunity to express my thanks and appreciation to our community for the level of cooperation that we have been seeing from the public. I recognize that there have been some frustrating moments for our community lately, and I do appreciate that being restricted and engaging in certain activities has been a challenge. But it's critical to remember that COVID-19 guidelines are in place to ensure the health and safety of all of Bermuda. It's been very encouraging to see our COVID numbers continuing to decline. In that regard, the public truly deserves to be commended for their compliance and vigilance. With that, I will just share a few reminders and updates from the Ministry of National Security. The Bermuda Police Service. The Bermuda Police Service continues to work with our partner agencies, the Royal Bermuda Regiment and the Bermuda Reserve Police, on enforcement of the COVID-19 regulations. Additionally, we are working alongside the Department of Environmental Health on COVID compliance matters. This includes visits to various businesses and restaurants to ensure that patrons and establishments are engaging in the appropriate health and safety guidelines. On the water, the BPS will be working alongside the Bermuda Coast Guard to bolster the marine policing response this holiday weekend and to monitor COVID compliance as well as antisocial behavior on the water. Also over the holiday weekend, the BPS will be conducting roadside sobriety checkpoints. So we are urging the public to please make sensible and responsible decisions this weekend. As always, we are encouraging anyone who sees any breaches of the regulations to please call 211. The public can also use the online portal at the BPS website under www.bermudapolice.bm. Turning to the Royal Bermuda Regiment, the Coast Guard continues to operate 24 hours a day to ensure that our waters are safe for all to enjoy. And where necessary, the Coast Guard will address any inshore maritime offenses. This includes any breaches of the COVID-19 regulations. We recognize that there's been a heightened focus on our local waters in the last couple of weeks. Currently, there are 2 maritime incidents which are under review. Both of these matters are being investigated by the BPS. Again, it's important to stress that the regulations are in place for everyone's safety. Boat operators have a responsibility for the security of their passengers. This includes ensuring that they have the required safety equipment on board and that they abide by maritime and COVID-19 regulations. As recreational and commercial boat use continues to increase, all Coast Guard vessels will be conducting operational patrols to provide safety, security, and to ensure compliance. And to meet the extra demand over the holiday period, the Coast Guard will have the additional personnel on patrol. I would now like to turn the attention to the matter of large group exemptions. The ministry appreciates that now that the warmer weather is upon us, there's a desire for the public to host more and more gatherings. As a note, currently, large group gathering exemptions are activities or events with more than 50 people. As a reminder, under the current guidelines, weddings, funerals, and religious services are allowed with 50 people in accordance with the public health regulations. Exemptions are required for events with more than 50 people. We are also seeking the public's patience and cooperation as we work to clear a significant number of requests for large group exemption applications. We appreciate the public's eagerness to receive their approvals, but it's imperative that we do our due diligence to ensure that we assess each request. The approval process can take around 4 weeks, so it's important that we manage the public's expectations. Members of the community can visit the following link to apply for a large group gathering exemption at forms.gov.bm/exemption for large gatherings. Please note that 30 days notice must be given where applicable. For more information regarding the current public health regulations, you can visit www.gov.bm. Finally, as it relates to the quarantine guidelines for non-immunized persons, as a reminder, the mandatory supervised quarantine for non-immunized travelers arriving in Bermuda by air takes effect on June 20th, 2021. By mandatory supervised quarantine, it is meant that those hotel properties that have been designated as such by the government. There are 7 approved quarantine locations: Cocoa Reef Resort, Grotto Bay Beach Resort and Spa, Hamilton Princess and Beach Club, Fairmont Southampton, Willow Bank Resort, Coral Beach and Tennis Club, Rosemont Guest Suites. When entering Bermuda, all non-immunized travelers will be placed on quarantine, which includes a mandatory 14-night prepaid booking at a government-authorized hotel at the traveler's expense, except in the case of certain limited exemptions. All travelers, whether entering Bermuda by air or sea, must submit the following information electronically via the Travel Authorization, TA, before they board their flight or before arrival at Seaport. Negative pre-departure PCR COVID-19 test result within 4 days of travel. Passport details scan if applicable. COVID-19 system self-assessment. Vaccine certificate or exemption approval or hotel reservation. To learn more about the quarantine facility requirements, please visit www.gov.bm coronavirus travelers. Once processed through the LF Wade International Airport, persons will be transported from the airport to the hotel by the government designated transport. As I close, I must note that as we continue the significant work of managing the COVID-19 virus, it's important that we remain vigilant. Managing the spread of COVID-19 is an everyday effort. We cannot become complacent as this will continue to see us have restrictions, and it'll be concerning times for our communities. I'm encouraging the public's continued cooperation, compliance, and patience. Above all, please stay safe and please continue to make responsible decisions to protect you and your families.
Thank you, Minister of National Security, and thank you certainly to the work of your team at the ministry who have been working hard to finalize the supervised quarantine operation. It has not been easy work, but on Sunday, we will add further protections to our borders to ensure that we can keep our local economy open. Thank you also for your tireless work in managing the large group exemptions. With the ending of restrictions, there will undoubtedly be an increase of activity over the upcoming holiday weekend. While we are in an enviable position as a country to open up, we must also remember that the pandemic is not over, and we must remain vigilant as we go about our days. Bermuda is fortunate to have tools at our disposal to help us reduce the risk of coronavirus spread, the newest of which is SafeKey. Those persons who hold a vaccine-based SafeKey will be aware that their SafeKey expires today. You can renew your SafeKey for another month by going to gov.bm/SafeKey. And there is a link at the top of the page for you to click, enter your surname and your email, and you'll be sent a new link via email to renew your Safe Key and vaccination certificate. The renewed Safe Keys will expire on July 15th, at which time all Safe Keys will move to a rolling date as originally announced. Safe Key will continue to be required for large events above the maximum size of 100. And while Safe Key is no longer required for daily activities, anyone can use it for private functions such as a house party. Safe Key's accessibility and ease of use makes it a helpful tool to have on hand to give anyone peace of mind. In the 2 months since I first announced Bermuda's plan to move beyond the pandemic, which included supervised quarantine to protect our borders from new variants, social media platforms and even more traditional communications have been overrun with crass and quite frankly threatening messages. It is perhaps the tension of the times that has led to an abandonment of our historic ability as Bermudians to disagree without being disagreeable. I fully appreciate the anger, and while I may disagree with the manner in which it is expressed, I understand it. Leadership means being prepared to sacrifice popularity for principle and duty. In this case, the principle is one I am sworn to uphold. It is my duty as Premier of this country to do my best to keep the people of Bermuda safe. And it is that duty that I and the government have placed above all others during the pandemic. It would be easy to yield and give in to the pressure of the very loud voices raised daily in condemnation of our decisions. To yield may achieve temporary quiet and appease some, but it would not provide safety for our country. This government has chosen safety over expediency because true leadership, especially in these times, demands such choices. When I look at other countries where there are similar choices to be made, matched with equal levels of frustration and leaders in similar unenviable positions, safety outweighs expediency every time. The ability to operate normally here at home is now squarely dependent on the protections we impose and enforce at our borders. It is that simple. Is it ideal to impose such restrictions on the free movement of people? Of course not. Is it the government's desire to persist in limiting group sizes and the time people must be indoors? Definitely not. I will continue to say that as Premier and as a citizen of this country, I do not like that I have to do this. The cabinet does not like that we have to do this. The legislators do not like that we have to do this. We don't like curfew. We don't like restrictions, and nor do we enjoy imposing such strict protections at our borders. But the record of our management of the pandemic over these last 15 months will show that we have not only successfully contained outbreaks when they arose and protected our healthcare system and our community, but we have done so through a balanced approach, which allowed for safe economic activity. Our record will also show that wherever we can safely move restrictions, we do so. In the coming months, the exact same approach will be taken. As we open up our country, we need to restore some focus to our society, because moving beyond the pandemic also means moving beyond these temporary disputes and coming together to address how we will lift people up after this economic decline, how we will once again get back in the tourism business, and how we will achieve affordable healthcare for all. Those things are priorities now and await us beyond the pandemic too. That work can only receive the attention and effort so desperately needed if we protect Bermuda at the border and provide the space for us to do what is needed for our people. In order to ensure that moving beyond the pandemic is more than a catchphrase, and for it to become reality, there can be no more lockdowns and curfews. We have far bigger things to debate than raft ups. In the midst of these arguments, we have a crisis of affordable housing. While we forward the latest memes and WhatsApp messages, a single mother is trying to make up her rental arrears so she and her child don't go homeless. These are the issues that the government must be committed to addressing. As I close, and as we look forward to the upcoming holiday weekend and celebrate National Heroes Day, I ask that we remember the heroes of Bermuda's rich and proud history. And I also ask that we keep the heroes of our present in our thoughts. It is fitting that we are able to end restrictions this weekend, as to be able to do so is due to the hard work and efforts of so many Bermudians who helped push us forward in our battle against the coronavirus. Thanks to these modern day heroes, some who wear uniforms and work on the front lines, others who work behind the scenes in their offices until late at night, and so many others, we have taken back our island. Whether public officers or private citizens serving their community, we thank you for helping us to continue to move beyond the pandemic. I wish everyone a National Heroes Day in advance, and now I'm happy to take questions from members of the media.
Premier, we'll start with the World Gazette. World Gazette, you're live. World Gazette, you're live. Please ask your question. Unmute yourself. Okay, we still can't hear you, World Gazette. Okay, World Gazette, we'll come back to you. We can't hear you. We'll now go to TNN. World Gazette, we'll come back to you. And we're just waiting for TNN to come in. TNN?
Okay, sorry
TNN?
about that.
Oh,
Sorry, technical issues. I apologize profusely.
okay. Go ahead, World Gazette. TNN, please hold.
Sure. My first question is for the Minister of Health. You mentioned earlier that there were a list of properties where people could stay that were allowed for this mandatory quarantine procedure. Among those was the Fairmont Southampton. Are there plans to reopen the hotel for the purposes of quarantine, or is that a vestige of an earlier list?
Yes, Owen, as discussed previously, the Fairmont Southampton will be one of the 7 properties that will be made available for those individuals that are requiring the quarantine facility, the supervised quarantine facility. Insofar as whether it's opening sooner, insofar as to the general public, that is something that I could yield to the Premier, but it is certainly assisting us with respect to government's requirement for facilities to house those individuals that will require the mandatory supervised quarantine.
Oh, and happy to add to that. This weekend, I had the ability or the opportunity to tour of the Fairmont Southampton and see some of the items in which they were working on, along with the Minister of Finance and MP Crystal Caesars. You know that we are engaged in the effort to make sure we can get the redevelopment working. We went to go look at some of the new model rooms. I saw that the hotel, certainly, I thought the hotel was closed and shut down and all the rest, but the hotel, though not seeing persons and all the rest, fully operational, ACs, everything else running to make sure to protect against mold and other items, and staff there to keep the property clean and in repair. So I'd ask if, given that we were having to eliminate some of the restrictions, some of the exemptions, I wanted to make sure that we did not run out of rooms. So I asked the Fairmont Southampton if they had the ability to offer us some rooms and to use those rooms, and they said they will be able to do so by the 20th of the month when we put these restrictions into place. So that will be another option. And the Ministry of National Security will be working with the teams which are necessary to finalize the procedures around that.
I look forward to hearing more about that. Next question will also be for the Minister of Health. obviously there were 2,500 doses of Pfizer that were supposed to be delivered, the first dose by June 6th. Can you say if all of those were actually delivered to patients or whether some had to be thrown away, and if so, how many?
Thank you, Owen. Actually, it was June 8th was the last date of the first date for the Pfizer vaccines, and we actually exceeded that number, which is gratuitous that we're getting more from the UK next week. But no, we did not have to discard any of the doses. We exceeded that number by quite a number. So we're thrilled. I think of important note is to just encourage and remind individuals that if they do seek their doctors, they make an informed choice about whether they wish to be immunized by speaking to their doctor, that there will be more supplies made available. They can register online, and we will recommence doing first doses later on this week.
Now, you mentioned earlier today that we are beginning another 4,680 doses. That's not going to be enough to put Bermuda over that the herd community immunity level. Can you say if there's sufficient to get more so that we can actually reach that level?
You're right with respect to those calculations. However, the United Kingdom government has indicated to us that they will continue to supply us as long as the need and the demand exists. So we anticipate getting more supplies after the supply due to arrive on the 24th.
Thank you. Now, you've emailed a whole bunch of questions. Obviously, we're only limited to 4 today, so I hope to get responses to those by email. But for my question number 4, my last question of the day, for the Premier, you said earlier today, obviously, the importance of this mandatory quarantine for the non-immunized travelers, how it's important for public health. If this is a matter that is necessary, that is important for public health, can you say why it has been delayed?
I think when I had a statement this weekend, I said that it's important that we get things right. And it was important that we get things right. And the last thing, especially when we're dealing with persons who are going to have to be in supervised quarantine, making sure that we have all the policies sorted, making sure that everything is smooth. We wanted to make sure we got time to get it right. Would we like to have it in place on June 6th? Absolutely. Are we upset that we're doing it on June 20th? Certainly it would have been preferable to do it on June 6th or either June 13th. But it is now confirmed and going into place on June 20th. And I think this is it's something that's very important. What I would like to say is certainly that with this supervised quarantine and with the remarks of which I had mentioned, it is vital that this protection is there to keep our country safe from the importation of variants. I understand that there's lots of debate, but as I said inside of my comments, we are following a risk-based approach, and we were rigorous in making sure that we could get this right and proper. And so we've got it right, we've got it proper, and it is going to go into effect. And it is the firm belief of the government of Bermuda that it will do what is necessary to keep dangerous variants out of Bermuda and to reduce the risk that would happen.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, and I apologize for the earlier technical issues.
Premier, we'll now go to TNN. TNN, you're live. Please ask your question.
Good evening. You can hear me, yes?
Yeah. Yes.
Let me begin. First of all, we've had 2 weeks not having a president. You're subject to just 4 questions. It disturbs me over in the free world, in the free press, that we are like that, Premier. Can this, if you're going to continue to have this press conference every other week, can you have some type of consideration where we would get 6 questions? Because we have 5 members on the panel and we only get 4 questions, and I feel that's not fair. Just a statement. Thank you. Premier or National Security Minister, or Minister Howard, TNN understands that with the story of this wrapped up with Shaggy and that revolved through a BTA top-ranking official was on board the vessel and partaking in the activities, would you consider this to be a conflict of interest?
I'll do my best to answer the question as the ministry, as the Bermuda Tourism Authority falls under my responsibility as minister responsible for tourism. I do not know whether the BTA person was on the various boats, on another boat around, but I do understand that there was an employee of the Bermuda Tourism Authority at the event. Whether or not I consider it a conflict of interest is a different story. What is clear is that there was a raft up that took place, that permission was not given for boats to be tied together from the Ministry of National Security. And the reason why permission cannot be given is because the Minister of National Security only has the power to approve large events and exemptions over the amount which is set in law. The Minister of National Security or no government official has the ability to approve something to take place which is unlawful. The only exemptions that the minister can give is the ability for there to be multiple persons, and the suggestion that any person in government gave and issued approval for something to take place that is not lawful is not correct.
Thank you. My next question is for Dr. Karika Weldon. Doctor, you gave a brilliant breakdown of the different variants and percentages of what's touched on in Bermuda. Do you foresee the Delta variant reaching our shores come autumn or winter of this year?
Good evening, Trevor. I do actually. I've been reading up a lot more about it because we are at the whims of, as was stated, a simple long-haul flight from the UK. And so it would be naive to think that we wouldn't have it arrive, but we are in a position where we can detect it very quickly and we'll be able to know how to manage it. So am I worried? No, because we have the defenses, but am I expecting it? Yes.
Thank you. Premier, I guess my next question is for you. Most often, not just because of the policy of vaccinating people, but because of young people feeling that they have enough of immune system to fight off any viruses. These young people have not been readily looking to get vaccinated. Will the government now make a real push to have not just have young people, but young adults vaccinated?
I will defer to the Minister of Health, the CMO, after my initial comments, but I just think that the government and all government departments who have been working on our vaccination program have done an outstanding job. And I think that there's been a push for all age groups, whether it be as young as 12 or up to senior citizens, to make it available. So I don't know, Dr. Aya, if you want to comment further on the question from Mr. Lindsay or Minister of Health, but I just want to commend the efforts of the teams. I mean, there was a time when, there was a criticism that we weren't going to have, that we weren't going to be able to, get doses in arms. And as the Minister of Health indicated, that on June 8th, we actually gave a few too many. And so if we didn't get any more, then we would have been in a tricky situation, but we're able to get more. So I think that just speaks to, and I'm certain that there will be breakdowns provided of age, but I know that the younger ages will continue to go up, and the older ages have gone up, and that's it. I mean, but it's a personal choice. And so what we are doing in Bermuda is what I want to do and to focus on is to move beyond the pandemic, to keep our local economy open, to relieve the stress and pressure on everyday lives. And the best way through that, as all the experts will say, is to make sure that you have sound and concrete protections at the border. Dr. Aya, Minister of Health, wish to comment on vaccinations?
I'll just add, thank you, Premier Trevor. We are seeing an increase in interest and registration and rolling up sleeves within that young demographic. Bermuda is not dissimilar to other jurisdictions where there is more of a hesitancy within that age group. However, we continue to get the message out to encourage persons to make the wise choice, speak to their physicians, et cetera, make an informed decision which works best for them. But we are seeing that there are more persons that are registering and getting the vaccine in that younger age group. Travel may be one of the biggest motivators for individuals to actually seek to get immunized. So we will continue our efforts. As the Premier indicated, we're very pleased with what we've seen thus far. 74% of our eligible population are vaccinated, and 72% and 62% are immunized. So we're making great strides, and we will continue with those efforts. Thank you, Trevor.
If I can just, okay. I was going to add to that, Trevor. Your starting point was that younger people are hesitant to get the vaccines, and as the minister and the premier said, I think that starting point may not be correct. The figures that we have suggest that more people have had at least one dose than haven't. So that's not entirely correct. And as the minister said, the uptake, particularly over the last 2 weeks, has been really, really fantastic, and people understand the importance of protecting themselves and the importance of protecting the community. And that is translated into large numbers of people getting vaccinated. So, ministers pointed out that people who may have, for any reason, missed vote before June 8th, there is still an opportunity for you to register and get vaccinated with the doses that we're expecting next week. Thank you.
Thank you. My last question, what, I guess for you, Premier, what will happen when people are abroad and filling out their travel authorization, not vaccinated and don't have their prepaid quarantine hotel? Will they not be allowed to return to their homes, or will they incur a fine?
I think the Minister of Health has spelled out the requirements in order to get a travel authorization. And there will also, of course, be, I would say, fines that would be part of any violations of what is required inside of law. Minister of Health or Minister of National Security, I don't know if you want to speak any further, but I think we've laid out the things in entirety. Minister?
Yeah, that's correct. Trevor, the provisions under the legislation will require that everyone that is returning to Bermuda will be required to upload a travel authorization. The Minister of National Security rightfully outlined what are the documents that will be required for that travel authorization, and one such document would be a confirmation that they have prepaid for the hotel, unless they fall into one of the 3 exempted categories that I spoke about a few moments ago.
If they fall outside of those categories, what happens?
Persons will not be permitted to return to Bermuda in the absence of completing the travel authorization.
That's what I wanted to hear you say. Thank you.
I said it earlier. I'll repeat it. TA
Thank
is
you.
important. You'll see the regulations will speak to that you are required to complete the travel authorization before arriving to Bermuda.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Premier, we'll now have Bermuda Broadcasting. Don Burgess, please go ahead with your question.
Good evening, and thank you. Health Minister, how many 12 to 15-year-olds received the first dose of the vaccine, and how has this helped push Bermuda towards the 70% vaccination goal?
Don, if you give me a minute to calculate, but I think it's about 2,000, just over 2,000. I'll do some rough math because I'm looking at the grid, but it's about, give me a minute, Don.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, it's just over 2,000 persons that have received at least one dose since we started opening up that age group a couple weeks ago.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Along with that, can you pinpoint the main reasons why we haven't achieved community immunity yet? At the current vaccination rate, we're still about 7 weeks away from the 70% plus 2 weeks.
John, as I said before, when this question's been raised, we are not dissimilar to other jurisdictions where where persons have reached somewhat of a soft ceiling, and Bermuda's not different. We continue to promote the messaging about choice and speaking to your physician about making a decision that's best for you, and we will continue with that messaging. The government is not discouraged by the stats that we've seen thus far, and we will continue with the messaging. We've seen tremendous inroads with respect to the vaccination immunization program that started on the 11th of January, and we will not be deterred.
I don't know whether yourself or one of the doctors is best to qualify to answer this. We appeared to have the makings of a perfect storm, the growing threat of the Delta variant, the imminent lifting of restrictions here, and in a few weeks in the UK, and the onset of summer with all the social activity that entails. What can we do now to help ensure we don't experience another outbreak and have tough restrictions put back in place?
I can have a go, Don. I think with the Premier and the Minister have stated in their statements how important it is that people, that to emphasize that we're not out of the woods completely, but we cannot afford to throw caution to the wind. We've all worked extremely hard so far to get to where we're at and to protect this. Bit of feedback coming through. Right, okay. Right, and to protect the gains we've made so far, everybody should carefully consider their actions going forward. This is not the time to engage in high-risk activities that might actually promote this virus. And we also, persons who have not been vaccinated should carefully consider their position and speak with their trusted medical personnel who may be able to answer their questions and decide what is appropriate for them. In addition to that, we are putting defense at our borders to identify if we get any of these variants early. Everything that we discussed this evening so far points to that direction. And the whole idea of putting this defense at the border is we can stop it quickly before it runs through our community. And that's what we need to do. It's everybody's responsibility on the island to keep us to continue to keep us safe.
Thank you very much. Mr. Premier, I'm sure you sense the public compliance with COVID regulations is starting to wear very thin. The recent raft ups come to mind. If you do experience another outbreak, I know it's unpleasant for you, but how difficult will it be to reimpose tough restrictions?
Not difficult at all. And I don't think that we will shy away from that. But our job is to move beyond the pandemic. And I think it's the responsibility just the CMO for everyone to do it. I mean, the fact is that we have the ability to go around. Certainly, we have the ability to live our lives. And I expect people to go outside, take advantage of the sunshine. Outside, transmission risk is very minimal outdoors. Hopefully, you're not in a big crowd, but that's what it is. And the fact is that, we have worked hard and we have been through a lot. But there has been, as the CMO has said, in all age categories, there's more people who have taken the vaccine than who have not. The fact that as the Minister of Health says, over, what was it, Minister, 77% of the eligible population or something around that number, that is a significant amount of people that are doing it. So we have the protection that is there. There may be some cases. It is likely that they will meet more dead ends than not. That is the nature of vaccination and the nature of the reduction of risk. We still have indoor masking, which is required, and there's still a control on, large groups and large events. It's not typical for people to have 100 people over your house, but, if you want to have a wedding, then, you want to have a wedding. If there's a funeral and you want to celebrate, someone's life, then those are the rituals which we're used to. And I know that our churches, I know that our restaurants, I know that our hotels and our other places are going to keep the precautions. Keep washing your hands. Keep, masking up. Don't have to just mix around everyone, but we've been through this so long that we've got it. I think we can have that responsibility in ourselves, and that is what we're trusting the people of Bermuda to do. And we sincerely hope that they will grasp this, because this is our time to make sure that we can open our country to the world and to make sure that we say, you know what, we are a place where we are safe and we are doing what is necessary to keep our country safe and free from variants. So, the angst will certainly be there, but leadership is not easy. None of us, Minister of Health, Minister of National Security, or myself, signed up thinking this job would be easy. We also didn't sign up thinking this job that would be in a once-in-a-century pandemic. But at the end of the day, we've made decisions that are in the best interest of the health of the people of whom we serve. And so for that, I recognize that people may feel a certain way, but it's on us to make sure that we do what is necessary to make moving beyond the pandemic a reality.
Thank you very much. Thank all of you.
Premier, we now have Media Maya Palacios. Maya, you're now live. Please ask your question.
Good evening, everyone. Maya Palacio here for Media Maya. My first question comes from a community member, and it's going to go to the Minister of Health. They're asking whether or not the new doses of the Pfizer will be made a priority for university students as well as children ages 12 to 15, since they're the ones who didn't have the opportunity to take it in the first place. Will it be made a priority for them, and when can they make appointments?
The doses that we're anticipating getting next week for the Pfizer are open to anybody that registers. You can start the registration now, and we anticipate starting the first doses this week. So anyone that is registered, we've always maintained that everyone that wants vaccines, we will have sufficient supplies on island to provide that for those persons.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. My next question goes to the Minister of National Security. Can you confirm that everyone, including who flew in, like Shaggy, was tested and confirmed negative before they attended the events, and that they were in compliance with the quarantine restrictions for vaccinated and unvaccinated persons?
You're on mute, Minister.
Sorry about that. I am unable to speak to the status of the performer Shaggy, but the persons for the Revolve event through the application process were all vaccinated persons.
My question was whether or not can you confirm that when they arrived, they tested and got negative results before attending any of the events?
They were advised that they had to follow health guidelines.
Minister of Health,
Let me add to that. Maya, as I understand it, the individual that you're speaking about, all persons that arrive in Bermuda are required to have a PCR test at the border and are required to remain in their place of their place of residence or hotel facility until such time as they receive their results. In this particular case, this individual did not do that. However, having said that, we at Health learned about it when everybody else did, pretty much when it was on the internet. And by the time we were able to explore it, the individual had already departed.
Thank you very much. Another question. Leaders can go to the CMO. Doctors are discussing antibody certificates in other countries. Is Bermuda considering antibody certificates for persons who have recovered from coronavirus?
Okay, so antibody certificates, you said?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Right, so what we're offering in Bermuda is vaccination certificates. And that is an objective way of telling that someone has been vaccinated, and we expect that they are protected from serious disease, and their risk of transmitting these diseases is much lower. There's been a lot of discussions around previous infections. There are several problems with that. First of all, we don't know how long the vaccine and the immunity from that lasts for. There are different studies that show different results. And secondly, the type of immunity that you get from that isn't particularly consistent. It depends on what your body produces. And it also depends on how sick you are. So if people who are very, very sick with mount a vigorous response, people who are not so ill don't mount a good response. So the best way to know that you're mounting good antibody response is to get vaccinated, and that's why we're taking a decision only to offer a vaccination certificate in the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. My final question will also go to the Minister of Security or to the Premier as well, is when do you believe that the investigation that's taking place will evolve, will actually have an end date for the public to know what came out of that investigation, or will the public be waiting for an answer, sort of like how we have been for Officer Barbie, who has been, on paid leave for over a year, still under investigation? Because it does take a very long time, it seems, for Bermuda investigations through the BPS to end.
Thank you for the question, Maya. The investigations are carried out by the Bermuda Police Service, and the government actually doesn't have operational responsibility for them. But I will say on their behalf that I'm sure that they are dotting every I and crossing every T, and I'm hopeful that we see some results very soon.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Thank you very much, Media Maya. We now go to Island Stats. Earl Basin, you're now live. Please ask your questions.
Good evening, everyone. It would appear, Mr. Premier, that the country is deeply divided on having top match. Much of it is due to the time frame given by the government on the approval to host the event. What do you say to the people of Bermuda in this regard?
Oh, I don't remember the exact timeline, but I know that I think I got in trouble from the president of the St. George's Cricket Club, who made some comments that I had announced to the country, close to a month ago, that we would be giving approval for the event to go ahead. So, it certainly is a challenge, and I know for a fact that the counting game, and I sincerely hope that there will be cut match. We have done everything on the clubs in regards to the financial sponsorship that would be available. We've had the health teams to help with them, work with their plans. They've indicated that they want to have a reduced capacity event, and we sincerely hope that it can move forward. That is our hope. That is our wish. That is our expectation. And so deeply divided. I'm not entirely sure. I'm kind of wearing a neutral tie today that has light blue and dark blue and what's it called? But as the months go closer, I will just, pitch up with my red and blue. I sincerely hope that the event can happen. But one of the things that I was informed of in this job is that cup match is a matter for the clubs and not a matter for the government. So we have given them permission for the event to happen. That was given. Certainly, they received their conditional approval in May. And I sincerely hope that they're able to move forward.
Well, I can also add to that one, Earl, if you would like, in terms of time frames.
Sure.
Surely. The request was received on April 9th, actually. And during the month of April, there was no large gathering approvals during that period. And so the regulations, when they changed, we were able to do large gathering approvals effective May 9th. And May 10th, we immediately began processing all of the requests that we'd received. And I believe that we provided the conditional approval on the 25th of May. So it was 2 weeks after the time that we were able to do so.
Okay, and that was the night of the press conference.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess to the two of you, as members of the St. George's Cricket Club, I know the Premier supports the other club, but I know he's a member of St. George's. You could look shocked all you want. We all know. But anyway, the St. George's Cricket Club is due to host a meeting with their members this evening at 7:30. What are you hoping that comes out of that meeting for Bermuda to host the biggest event that we host annually?
I'm hopeful, Earl, that they come out of that and say that they're going to be hosting Cup Match in whatever format they can. I think it would be good for the country to be able to have Cup Match. It is a celebration of our emancipation. You don't have to wonder where my heart is and where I believe any victories will be. But of course, from the government standpoint, we are looking to be as supportive and helpful as we can with, getting on and hopefully bringing that cup in.
The only thing in which I'll say, Earl, is to the members that certainly there's been a lot of stuff that the government has been engaged in. And I will accept that sometimes we have not given them everything that they have needed or wanted at the exact same time. But I think what Minister Ming has said is that Cup Match is far more than a game. It is a celebration of our culture and a celebration of emancipation. And it is my hope and expectation that following the confirmations of support, following the confirmation of financial support, following all the work of which the Minister of Youth, Culture and Sport has been doing with the various clubs, that we will see success. So I sincerely hope that we're able to progress this matter, and but we will leave it to the club. So if anyone is listening, I think that it's in your hands. And Cup Match is certainly something that is, as Minister Ming said, important for the country. And it is my sincere hope that we'll be able to see people at the Wellington Oval and the wonderful breeze that is up there in the last Thursday and Friday before the first Monday in August.
Yeah. And my final question on Cup Match would be, if we continue down the road we're on of this, with the cases and all, is there a possibility that the numbers of limited people can be increased for the Classic?
Just from the Classic perspective, Minister Ming, I mean, you could probably speak to it better, but I know that the president of St. George's Cricket Club called me. We issued them an approval for 4,000. And they had come back and they said that they only wanted to have 2,500, and whether or not the government would continue to extend the financial support in that case. And we said yes. I mean, it's what's comfortable for them. Cup Match is certainly for the clubs, and we will continue to work with them. And we can't tell what the future is, but if they want to hit the 4,000, that's where the approvals are given. If they want to go higher, it's just a question of where we are at that point in time. But we were comfortable with the 50% outdoor capacity, which we said previously that outdoor sporting events or outdoor events will be given 50% approval for 50% capacity with the use of safety, and we intend to honor that.
Okay. To the CMO, it's been publicly stated by the National Football Coach that he and others were prevented from traveling a few months ago to represent Bermuda. Can you give us your side? Because that's the one side we haven't heard. The reason behind not allowing them to represent us?
I'm not sure this is the right time to talk about this, Earl. But what I would just like to say is that news has committed. What we have done, worked very, very closely with all partners. Dr. Karika Walden actually joined me to try and make this as safe as possible. We were given numerous opportunities to make this as safe as possible. We chose to ignore it. Unfortunately, we are all now living with the consequences. We can have a chat about this at some other time where I can give you the full details around this. But what you have stated is far from the truth.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Premier, there are no further questions from the media.
Thank you, Director Wilson. There's one thing. I know that Dr. Miller from the hospital is with us. And before I close, I don't know, Dr. Miller, if you wanted to say anything regarding rumors in the community on ICU patients related to the coronavirus. I don't know if you want to take the opportunity to clarify that.
Certainly, Premier, thank you for the opportunity to clarify that. I've been asked by a number of people, and some have sent me clippings from social media. Unfortunately, the individual or individuals who decide to post such a thing fail to check their facts. I can say categorically that we've had no patient admitted to the intensive care unit with any vaccine-related problem in the last several weeks. The only patients we've had in ICU related to COVID were patients who were not immunized and had COVID, and we worked hard with those patients, and we didn't manage to save most of them. Unfortunately, a few succumbed But in relation to this rumor, we have not had any patient, any young patient or old patient for that matter, with any heart-related problem or any vaccine-related matter admitted to the intensive care unit of the King Edward Memorial Hospital. And it's a creation of someone's imagination to suggest that there was such a patient, or I've even heard rumors that there was such a patient that was flown out. None of that happened.
Thank you very much, Dr. Miller, and thank you to the work of your team at the hospital. Dr. Io, I'm sure that life is a little bit better in the Office of Chief Medical Officer. Minister Wilson, it's certainly been a significant amount of work which you have done the past few months, so thank you. Minister Ming, certainly a lot of work to get done, and as we approach Cup Match, I sincerely hope you send a message to your constituents that they vote to make sure that we can take back or keep our cup this year, Minister Ming. I would appreciate that. Thank you. And Dr. Weldon, certainly thank you for your continued work as we continue to protect our borders and diagnose the cases that are here. I want to certainly say thank you to our sign language interpreters who are continuing to make sure that this program is successful. Thank you to all the team at the Department of Communication, and thanks to the media for asking questions. As I said in the statement, it is all up to us. We can take personal responsibility for what it is that we're doing, making sure that the pandemic is not over, but it's up to all of us to make sure that we are mindful of our surroundings, continue to do the simple things, avoid closed spaces, and wash your hands, and wear a mask and cover up when you're indoors. But we can enjoy ourselves, and we can make sure that we are successful in moving this country past the pandemic. So I want to thank everyone for listening, and I want to thank everyone who has made the announcements that we have done today possible with all their hard work, energy, and effort behind the back lines, public officers who write the statements, who write the laws, who do all of this work, who work countless hours to make sure that we can deliver for the people of Bermuda. I want to say thank you to you as well. So with that, good evening, Bermuda. Oh, I think I got it wrong. Try again. Thank you, Bermuda, and good night.